The massive station called Nexus Prime hung in space like a metal moon. Inside its great halls, the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered for their monthly meeting. The Galactic Council had ruled over hundreds of worlds for thousands of years. Today they would hear from the humans. Ambassador Kim Tae-ho walked slowly through the curved hallways of the station. His black diplomatic suit was simple compared to the flowing robes and crystal armor worn by other species. Behind him, Director Park Min-ji carried a heavy case filled with documents and data drives. Both humans looked tired. They had traveled for 3 weeks to reach this place. The council chamber was enormous. 12 tall chairs formed a circle in the center of the room. Each chair was designed for a different alien species. The Vorthak sat in chairs made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. The gas-breathing Namari floated in clear bubbles filled with their home atmosphere. The insect-like Kelak clustered together in their hive formation. Kim Tae-ho had been Earth's ambassador for 15 years. He had sat in these chambers many times before. Usually, the council listened politely to human requests and then voted them down. Today felt different. Today, the aliens seemed annoyed that humans had even asked for a meeting. Councillor Vexathara spoke first. She was the current speaker of the council, a Vorthak whose crystal body sparkled with authority. Her voice echoed strangely in the chamber, like wind through broken glass. "Ambassador Kim," she said, not bothering to sound friendly, "your species has requested this emergency session. The council hopes your reasons are important. We have many pressing matters to discuss." Kim Tae-ho bowed slightly. "Thank you, Councillor Vexthara. We come before you seeking justice. For the past 6 months, the Drakmari Empire has been taking our colonies by force. They claim our settled worlds belong to them. We ask the Council to uphold galactic law and protect our territorial rights." A low rumble of laughter came from the Drakmari section. General Krexthor, their representative, was a massive creature covered in dark scales. His yellow eyes glowed with amusement. "Territorial rights?" Krexthor's voice boomed across the chamber. "These humans speak of rights to worlds they have barely begun to understand. The Drakmari Empire has ancient claims to these systems, claims that go back 3,000 years. Director Park Min-ji stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Images of human colonies appeared in the air above the council floor. Green farmlands, busy cities, and children playing in parks. The colonies looked peaceful and well-established. "Councilors," Park Min-ji said clearly, "these are our worlds. Humans have lived on them for 60 years. We have legal settlement charters for each one, filed with this very council and approved according to galactic law." She pressed a button on her device. Official documents appeared in the hologram, each one bearing the council's own seal of approval. New. Busan was settled in 2327. Gangnam Station was established in 2335. All paperwork was properly filed. All fees were paid. All environmental protection rules were followed. Councillor Vexathara barely glanced at the documents. "The Drakmari claims are older than your settlements, human. Much older." Kim Tae-ho felt his jaw tighten, but his voice remained calm. "With respect, Councillor, the Drakmari never filed claims on these worlds. They were marked as uninhabited and available for colonization when we arrived. If the Drakmari had ancient rights to these systems, why did they not object when we first settled there?" General Krexthor rose from his chair. Even sitting, he had been huge. Standing, he towered over the human delegation like a mountain of scales and muscle. "Because the Drakmari Empire was busy with more important matters," he growled. "We did not think a young species like humanity would dare to squat on our ancient territories. We were wrong to show such patience." The irony was not lost on Kim. "Tae-ho, the Drakmari spoke of patience while demanding that humans abandon their homes." "General Krexthor," Kim Tae-ho said, "our colonies house over 2 million human civilians. These people have built their lives on these worlds. Their children were born there. You cannot simply declare that their homes no longer exist. Watch us, Krexthor replied with a toothy grin. Other council members began to speak. The spider-like Arachnari representative clicked its approval of the Drakmari position. The energy beings called the Flux agreed that older claims should take priority. One by one, the most powerful species in the galaxy lined up against humanity. Kim Taeho listened, to each speaker with growing disappointment. He had hoped for justice. He had believed that the law meant something in this chamber. But it was becoming clear that the law only protected those strong enough to enforce it. Finally, Councillor Vex Thara called for a vote. All those in favor of recognizing Drakmari territorial claims and ordering human evacuation of the disputed systems? 11 hands, claws, and appendages rose into the air. Only the representative of the Zephyrians, a small, peaceful species, kept their vote down. Motion passed, Vexathara announced. The humans have 30 standard days to evacuate their illegal settlements. Kim Taeho stood up slowly. The chamber fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the station's life support systems. "Councilors," he said, his voice still calm and respectful. "We came here in good faith. We believed in galactic law. We believed in justice. We believed that agreements meant something." He looked directly at each council member as he spoke. "We have always tried to be good neighbors in this galaxy. We follow the rules. We pay our taxes. We help other species when they ask for aid. We have never started a war or conquered another world by force." Kim Taeho paused, gathering his thoughts. "But I want to be very clear about something. We did not come here begging for mercy. We came here seeking justice through the proper channels. There is a difference." Councillor Vexathara waved a crystal hand dismissively. "Your species is barely 2 centuries old in galactic terms, Ambassador Kim. Perhaps it is time you learned your proper place in the cosmic order. The strong rule, and the weak serve. This is how it has always been." Director Park Minji made a small hand signal to their aide, who immediately began packing up their equipment. "We understand your position perfectly, Counselor," Kim Taeho replied. "Thank you for making it so clear." As the human delegation prepared to leave, General Krexthor called out mockingly, "Give my regards to your colonies, humans. Enjoy them while you can." Kim Taeho stopped walking. He turned back to face the Drakmari general. "General," he said, quietly, "you seem to think we are afraid of you. You are mistaken. We respect the law, we respect order, and we respect the sovereignty of all species." His voice grew slightly harder. "We hope that respect is mutual." The council chamber erupted in laughter. The idea that humans could threaten the mighty Drakmari Empire seemed ridiculous to these ancient powers. As the humans walked away, none of the council members noticed the way Kim Taeho's hands clenched into fists. None of them saw the cold look that passed between him and Director Park Minji. None of them understood that they had just made a terrible mistake. The humans left Nexus Prime in silence. Their ship departed quietly, without any dramatic gestures or angry words. To the watching aliens, it looked like defeat. They were wrong. In the privacy of their ship, Director Park Minji sent a coded message to Earth. It contained only 4 words: "Diplomatic solution has failed." The response came back within hours. It was signed by the President of the United Earth Federation herself. Message received. Recommend humans everywhere prepare for new circumstances. Kim Taeho stared out at the stars as their ship headed home. Somewhere out there, General Krexthor was probably already planning his attack on New Busan. The Drakmari thought they understood humans. They thought patience meant weakness. Soon, they would learn the difference. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council's decision. Captain Lee Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, watching the long-range sensors with growing alarm. Massive shapes were moving through space toward the human colony of New Busan. The Drakmari fleet had arrived. Lee had commanded the frigate Soul's Pride for 8 years. It was a small ship compared to the massive vessels used by the older galactic powers, but it was fast and well-armed for its size. More importantly, it was crewed by humans who cared about protecting their people. "Captain," called his sensor operator, "I'm reading 12 large vessels approaching the outer system, Drakmari configuration. They're not answering our hail requests." Lee frowned. 12 ships was far more than needed to claim an abandoned system. This was an invasion force. "Send a message to New Busan," he ordered. "Tell Governor Yoon to begin emergency evacuation procedures, then get me a direct line to the Drakmari fleet commander." Down on New Busan's surface, Engineer Cho Hyeri was working late in the colony's main power plant when the evacuation alarm began to sound. She looked up from her console, confused. There had been no scheduled drills today. Her communicator buzzed with an incoming message from the governor's office. As she listened, her face went pale. The Drakmari were coming. The council had given them permission to take New Busan by force. Cho Hyeri was 28 years old. She had been born on New Busan, in the colony's first hospital. This world was her home in every sense of the word. The idea of abandoning it felt impossible, but she was also an engineer. She understood numbers and odds. New Busan had a population of 50,000 people. They had no military defenses except for Captain Lee's patrol ship. The incoming Drakmari fleet could destroy the entire colony without breaking stride. She began shutting down non-essential systems and backing up critical data. If they had to evacuate, she would save what she could. In space above the planet, Captain Lee finally received a response to his communications requests. The main screen of his bridge flickered to life, showing the massive form of General Warlord Krexthor. The Drakmari leader looked even more intimidating than he had in the council chambers. "Captain Lee," Krexthor rumbled, his voice filled with amusement. "I remember you from the security briefings. You command the little ship that thinks it can protect this system." Lee kept his voice steady and professional. "General Krexthor, this system is under the protection of the United Earth Federation. New Busan is a civilian colony with no military. Targets. I ask you to respect international law and withdraw your forces." Krexthor's laughter boomed through the bridge speakers. "International law? Captain, your own Galactic Council has ruled that this system belongs to the Drakmari Empire. We are simply reclaiming our property." "General, 50,000 people live on that planet. They have been there for 60 years. This is their home." "Not anymore," Krexthor replied coldly. "You have 48 hours to evacuate your illegal settlers. After that, we will clear them as navigational hazards." The transmission ended abruptly. Lee stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his crew. "You heard him," Lee said quietly. "Signal all civilian transports in the system. We need to begin immediate evacuation of New Busan and send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them the Drakmari have crossed the line." The next 2 days were a nightmare of organized chaos. Transport ships arrived from nearby human systems to help with the evacuation. Families packed whatever they could carry and said goodbye to, homes they had built with their own hands. Cho Hyeri worked around the clock to keep the colony's systems running while people evacuated. The power grid needed to stay active to operate the spaceport. The life support systems had to keep working until the last transport left. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. As the deadline approached, Drakmari warships moved closer to the planet. Their massive hulls blocked out the stars as they took up positions around New Busan. Lee's small frigate looked like a toy next to the alien dreadnoughts. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "the last civilian transport is preparing to depart. Governor Yoon is on board." Lee nodded. "Signal the transport. Tell them they have safe passage." As the final ship lifted off from New Busan's surface, Lee opened a channel to the Drakmari fleet. "General Krexthor, civilian evacuation is complete. The planet is empty. There's no need for further action. Krexthor's image appeared on screen, again. Good. You have learned to follow orders. Now withdraw your ship and never return to this system. General, I have one request. The colonists left behind personal belongings and cultural artifacts. They would like permission to return, someday to collect them. That will not be possible, Krexthor said with obvious satisfaction. We cannot risk contamination from human germs and diseases. The planet will need to be thoroughly sterilized. Lee felt his blood run cold. Sterilized? Of course. We cannot have Drakmari colonists exposed to alien bacteria. The entire surface will be burned clean and then rebuilt according to our specifications. Before Lee could respond, the Drakmari fleet opened fire. Massive energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking the abandoned cities of New Busan. Buildings that had taken decades to construct were vaporized in seconds. The beautiful parks where children had played were turned to ash and glass. Lee watched, in horror as 60 years of human civilization was erased in a matter of minutes. The bombardment was thorough and merciless. When it ended, New Busan looked like a dead world. You see, Captain, Krexthor said cheerfully. Clean and sterile, perfect for Drakmari settlement. Your people should thank us for improving the planet. Lee's hands clenched into fists. His voice was barely controlled when he spoke. General, that was completely unnecessary. The colonists had already evacuated. You destroyed their homes for no reason. No reason? Krexthor seemed genuinely surprised. Captain, we destroyed them to send a message. Your species needs to understand that defying the Drakmari Empire has consequences. The transmission ended. Lee stood on his bridge, staring at the ruins of New Busan through the main view screen. Behind him, his crew waited for orders. Some of them had friends and family who had lived on that planet. Sir, his tactical officer asked quietly. What are your orders? Lee was quiet for a long moment. Part of him wanted to attack the Drakmari fleet, even though it would be suicide. Part of him wanted to ram his ship into Krexthor's flagship and take as many of the aliens with him as possible. But he was a professional officer. He had a duty to his crew and to Earth Command. Set course for the Gangnam system, he ordered. Maximum speed. Send a priority message to Earth. Tell them New Busan has fallen. The Drakmari are not interested in coexistence. As the Soul's Pride jumped to hyperspace, Lee composed his final report on the New Busan incident. He chose his words carefully, but the message was clear. The Drakmari had not simply reclaimed territory. They had deliberately humiliated humanity and destroyed everything the colonists had built. The response from Earth Command came back within hours. It was brief and signed by Admiral Yoon Jae-won himself. Report received. Recommend all human forces prepare for expanded Drakmari activities. Rules of engagement under review. Meanwhile, in the wreckage of New Busan's cities, Drakmari survey, teams were already beginning their work. They found the ruins interesting but irrelevant. The planet had good mineral deposits and a pleasant climate. It would make an excellent addition to the Empire. None of the Drakmari bothered to study the ruins carefully. If they had, they might have noticed that the human buildings had been designed to withstand natural disasters. They might have wondered why a primitive species would need such robust construction techniques. They might have realized that humans came from a world where survival required strength, planning, and the ability to rebuild after catastrophe. Instead, they simply marked New Busan as conquered in their files and moved on to planning their next target. That was their second mistake. Their first had been assuming that patience meant weakness. Soon, they would learn the difference. 6 months after New Busan fell, the pattern had become clear. Admiral Yoon Jae-won stood in the war room aboard his flagship, the battleship Sejong, staring at a holographic map of human space. Red markers showed Drakmari attacks. There were too many of them. New Incheon had fallen 3 weeks after New Busan. The Drakmari had used the same tactics: overwhelming force, demands for evacuation, then complete destruction of human settlements. Haebangchon followed 2 weeks later. Then, Tongdaemun. Each time, human forces had followed their orders to show restraint and avoid escalation. The Drakmari were interpreting this restraint as fear. "Admiral," said Captain Oh Shungjin, his intelligence officer, "we have new reports from our scout ships. Drakmari fleets are moving toward 3 more human systems. Busan 2, Daegu Station, and—" He paused, looking uncomfortable. "Gangnam Research Station." Admiral Yoon's jaw tightened. Gangnam Station was different from the other targets. It was not just a colony. It was humanity's most advanced research facility, where their best scientists studied alien biology and developed new technologies. More importantly, it housed the complete genetic database of every species humans had encountered. "What's the status of our fleet?" Yoon asked. "We have 18 ships ready for immediate deployment," Captain O replied. "The Drakmari fleet's attacking. Our systems usually have 12 to 15 vessels each." Dr. Kang So-young, the station's chief xenobiologist, was present as an advisor. She had been studying the Drakmari attacks for months, looking for patterns that might give humans an advantage. "Admiral," she said quietly, "if the Drakmari take Gangnam Station, they will have access to biological warfare countermeasures for every known species. They could develop weapons that would be impossible to defend against." Yoon nodded grimly. He understood the implications. The research at Gangnam Station could be used to create diseases that would target specific alien species while leaving others unharmed. In the wrong hands, it would be a weapon of mass destruction. "Dr. Kang," he said, "I need to know something. In your professional opinion, are the Drakmari only targeting human colonies?" The doctor shook her head. "No, Admiral. I've been monitoring communications from smaller species throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians have lost 2 colonies in the past month. The Tidal High have been forced to abandon 3 underwater cities. The Chitter Hive worlds are reporting Drakmari inspection fleets in their space. The Galactic Council isn't protecting them either. The Council claims these are internal disputes that don't require intervention," Dr. Kang said bitterly. "The same excuse they used when the Drakmari attacked us." Admiral Yoon walked to the large view screen that showed the space around his flagship. In the distance, he could see other human ships, cruisers, destroyers, and frigates that made up Earth's modest navy. They were good ships with experienced crews, but they were designed for exploration and defense, not conquest. "Captain O," he said finally, "send a coded message to Earth Command. Tell them the Drakmari are planning to cross a line we cannot allow them to cross." The response from Earth came faster than expected. Admiral Yoon read it twice to make sure he understood correctly. It was signed by President Lee So-min herself. "Admiral Yoon, you are hereby authorized to defend Gangnam Station by any means necessary. The gloves are off." For the first time in months, Admiral Yoon smiled. Meanwhile, on a small trading station on the edge of human space, Dr. Kang So-young was having a secret meeting with representatives from several minor species. The Zephyrian delegate, a graceful being with translucent wings, spoke in hushed tones. "Dr. Kang," the Zephyrian said, "our people are grateful that humans are willing to listen. The larger species ignore our problems." A Tidal High representative speaking through a water-filled translation tank added their agreement. "The Drakmari claim they are liberating worlds from inefficient species. They say smaller civilizations are wasting valuable resources." The Chitter delegate, an insect-like being with multiple arms, clicked nervously. "Our intelligence networks suggest the Drakmari are planning something much larger than individual colony seizures. They speak of galactic reorganization and proper resource allocation." Dr. Kang felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying the Drakmari want to reorganize the entire galaxy?" "That is exactly what we are saying," the Zephyrian replied. They believe the galaxy should be ruled by the strongest species. Everyone else should serve or be removed. And the Galactic Council? The Council's major species benefit from the current arrangement, the Tidal High explained. They see the Drakmari expansion as useful for controlling smaller species. As long as their own territory is not threatened, they will not intervene. Dr. Kang made her decision. I need to ask all of you something important. If humanity chooses to fight back against the Drakmari, would your species be willing to provide intelligence and support? The three delegates looked at each other. The Zephyrian spoke first. Dr. Kang, our species are not warriors. We cannot provide military assistance. But if humans are willing to stand up to the Drakmari, we will help in any way we can. Information, the chitter clicked. We can provide information about Drakmari movements and plans. Safe passage, added the Tidal High. Our underwater cities can serve as hidden bases and supply points. Dr. Kang smiled. It was not much, but it was a start. Then we have an alliance. Back aboard the Sejong, Admiral Yoon was meeting with his senior officers. The holographic display showed the Drakmari fleet approaching Gangnam Station. 15 ships, including 2 massive dreadnoughts. Sir, said Commander Nam Jiwoo, his tactical officer. The Drakmari are following their standard approach pattern. They expect us to evacuate the station and withdraw. What they expect and what they get are going to be 2 very different things, Admiral Yoon replied. Signal all ships. We are going to defend Gangnam Station. No evacuation. No retreat. His communications officer looked surprised. Sir, what about our rules of engagement? We're supposed to minimize casualties and avoid escalation. Admiral Yoon held up the message from Earth Command. New rules of engagement, Lieutenant. We are authorized to defend by any means necessary. The K bridge crew exchanged glances. For months, they had been forced to watch helplessly as human colonies were destroyed. They had followed orders to show restraint while their people were driven from their homes. Now, finally, they had permission to fight back. Sir, Commander Nam asked, what about the Drakmari civilians on their colony ships? The Drakmari are not bringing civilians, Admiral Yoon said grimly. These are pure military fleets. They plan to sterilize Gangnam Station just like they did New Busan. He turned to address his entire bridge crew. For months, we have shown patience and restraint. We have followed galactic law even when our enemies ignored it. We have protected the innocent and avoided unnecessary violence. His voice grew harder. The Drakmari have mistaken our patience for weakness. They think humans are afraid to fight. Admiral Yoon looked out at the approaching enemy fleet. Today, they learned the difference between choosing peace and being unable to wage war. The 2 fleets approached each other in the void around Gangnam Station. The Drakmari ships were larger and more heavily armed, but the human vessels moved with precision and purpose. This time, there would be no evacuation. This time, there would be no retreat. On Gangnam Station itself, Director Im Suho refused all suggestions that he evacuate. The station housed thousands of researchers and support staff, but it also contained decades of irreplaceable scientific data. I'm not leaving, he told Admiral Yoon over the communication link. This station represents the best of human achievement. If the Drakmari want it, they can pry it from our cold, dead hands. As the enemy fleet drew closer, Admiral Yoon opened a general communication channel. This is Admiral Yoon Jae-won of the United Earth Federation Navy. You are approaching a human research station in violation of interstellar law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The reply came from General Krexthor himself, his massive form filling the main screen. Admiral Yoon, I remember you from the intelligence reports. You are the human who thinks he can challenge the Drakmari Empire. Krexthor laughed. We have destroyed 4 of your colonies without losing a single ship. Today will be no different. Admiral Yoon's response was calm and measured. General, you have mistaken our restraint for inability. You have confused our respect for law with fear of conflict. Today, you will learn why that was a mistake. The transmission ended. Both fleets prepared for battle. For the first time since the conflict began, humans would not show restraint. For the first time, the Drakmari would face humans who were fighting like the warriors they had always been. The Battle of Gangnam Station began exactly as General Krexthor expected. His massive fleet approached the human research station in the classic Drakmari formation, a crushing wall of firepower designed to overwhelm smaller forces through sheer superiority. What he did not expect was for the humans to attack first. Admiral Yoon Jae-won watched the enemy fleet advance on his tactical display. 15 Drakmari ships against his 18 human vessels. On paper, the aliens had the advantage. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, their armor thicker. But Admiral Yoon was not fighting by the same rules anymore. All ships, he broadcast to his fleet. Remember what we discussed. Today we do not fight to minimize casualties. Today we do not fight to protect enemy lives. Today we fight like our ancestors fought in the old wars of Earth. Commander Nam Ji-woo, his tactical officer, looked up from her console. Admiral, the Drakmari are moving into attack formation. They expect us to scatter when they open fire. Then, let's disappoint them, Yoon replied. Signal the fleet, attack pattern Delta, target their command ship first. The human fleet suddenly accelerated toward the Drakmari formation. Instead of the defensive posture the aliens expected, the humans were charging straight at them like ancient warriors on a battlefield. General Krexthor watched this development with amusement. Look at them, he told his bridge crew. The humans are so desperate they're going to ram us. This will be over quickly. He was right about it being over quickly. He was wrong about who would win. The human ships split into 3 groups as they closed distance. The first group, led by Admiral Yoon's flagship, headed straight for Krexthor's command vessel. The second group swung wide to attack the Drakmari, flanks. The third group did something no one expected. They accelerated past the enemy fleet entirely. Sir, Krexthor's tactical officer reported, the third human group is moving behind our formation. They're heading for our support ships. Let them, Krexthor laughed. Destroying a few supply vessels won't help them in the main battle. That was his first mistake. The ships the humans were targeting were not supply vessels. They were the fleet's command and control ships, the vessels that coordinated Drakmari fleet movements and communications. Captain Lee Dong-yun, now commanding the heavy cruiser New Seoul, led the attack on the Drakmari rear. His ship and 5 others opened fire on the alien command ships with everything they had. The Drakmari had not expected an attack from behind. Their rear vessels had lighter armor and fewer weapons. Within minutes, the Drakmari fleet lost its coordination network. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly found themselves operating independently. Meanwhile, Admiral Yoon's group was engaging the enemy flagship directly. The Sejong was taking heavy damage, but it kept firing. More importantly, it kept moving closer to Krexthor's massive dreadnought. Admiral, Commander Nam reported, our forward armor is failing. We can't take much more of this. We don't need to take much more, Yoon replied grimly. Signal the Incheon and the Suwon. Execute ramming attack now. 2 human destroyers broke away from the main formation and accelerated toward the Drakmari flagship. Their captains had volunteered for this mission knowing it was almost certainly suicide, but they also knew it would cripple the enemy's most powerful ship. The first destroyer, INS Incheon, struck the Drakmari flagship near its main weapon arrays. The explosion tore a massive hole in the alien ship's hull and knocked out its primary guns. The second destroyer, INS Suwon, hit the engine section. Both human ships were destroyed in the impacts, but they took the Drakmari flagship out of the fight. General Krexthor found himself on a ship that was drifting powerless through space, its weapons offline and its engines dead. What are these humans doing? He demanded. They're fighting like madmen! His remaining tactical officer, working from a backup station, tried to explain. Sir, I think they're fighting like warriors. The battle continued to rage around Gangnam Station. Human ships used tactics the Drakmari had never encountered before. When their weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels. When their ships were crippled, they used them as guided missiles. When facing impossible odds, they attacked anyway. The frigate Soul's Pride, Captain Lee's old ship, was surrounded by 3 Drakmari cruisers. Instead of surrendering or trying to escape, its captain ordered a direct assault on the largest enemy vessel. The small human ship was destroyed, but it damaged the Drakmari cruiser so badly that it had to withdraw from the battle. Dr. Kang So-young watched the battle from Gangnam Station's command center. Director Im Soo-ho stood beside her, refusing all suggestions that they evacuate to the station's emergency shelters. Doctor, Im said quietly, I've never seen anything like this. Our ships are fighting like they have nothing to lose. They don't have anything to lose, Dr. Kang replied. The Drakmari made it clear that surrender means destruction. If we're going to die anyway, we might as well make it cost them. The tide of battle was turning. The Drakmari fleet, designed for overwhelming weaker opponents, was not prepared for enemies who fought with such desperate ferocity. Human ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Human crews that should have surrendered kept attacking. Admiral Yoon's flagship was heavily damaged, but it was still in the fight. From his bridge, now lit only by emergency lighting, he could see the Drakmari fleet beginning to waver. Commander Nam, he called to his tactical officer. Status report. We've lost 6 ships, Admiral, but the Drakmari have lost 8, including their flagship. Their remaining ships are falling back toward the edge of the system. Yoon nodded. It was time to send a message. He opened a communication channel to the retreating Drakmari fleet. General Krexthor's image appeared on screen, but he looked very different now. His command ship was dark and damaged. Emergency lights cast strange shadows across his scaled face. General Krexthor, Admiral Yoon said calmly. You wanted to see how humans fight when we stop showing restraint. Now you know. Krexthor's voice was filled with disbelief. You destroyed your own ships. You sacrificed your own people. What kind of species does that? The kind that remembers where we came from, Yoon replied. General, humans evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. We learned to fight not because we wanted to, but because we had to. For generations, we have chosen peace because it was better for everyone. He paused, letting his words sink in. But when peace is not an option, we remember what we are. Krexthor's remaining ships were jumping to hyperspace, fleeing the system as fast as they could. Before his own ship disappeared, the Drakmari general sent one last transmission. This is not over, human. The Empire will return with more ships. We will crush you. Admiral Yoon's response was quiet but firm. General, spread the word to your empire. Tell them that humans tried to do things the peaceful way. Tell them we followed the rules, respected the law, and honored our agreements. The Drakmari flagship was preparing to jump to hyperspace. Yoon continued speaking. Tell them that when those things failed, we remembered who we are. Tell them that patience and weakness are not the same thing. The enemy ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its wounded crew and its shaken general back to Drakmari space. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Yoon stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship. Around Gangnam Station, the wreckage of both human and Drakmari ships drifted in the void. The humans had won, but at a terrible cost. Director Im Soo-ho's voice came over the communication system. Admiral, this is Gangnam Station. We're still here. The research facility is intact. Good, Yoon replied. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them Gangnam Station stands. Tell them the Drakmari have learned that humans can bite back, as... the human fleet began rescue operations and damage assessment. News of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. For the first time since the conflict began, a Drakmari fleet had been defeated. More importantly, the galaxy had seen what humans could do when they stopped holding back. The message was clear. Earth's patience had limits, and those limits had just been reached. On distant worlds, representatives of smaller species received the news with a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that someone was finally standing up to the Drakmari Empire. Fear of what would happen when the Empire struck back in force. Deep in Drakmari space, military commanders were already planning their response. The Empire had never suffered such a humiliating defeat. They would return to human space with overwhelming force and show the galaxy what happened to species that dared to resist them. But they were making the same mistake they had made from the beginning. They still thought they understood humans. They still believed that the Battle of Gangnam Station was a desperate last stand by a weaker species. They were wrong. It was just the beginning. News of the Battle of Gangnam Station spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Drakmari fleet had been defeated in open combat. The implications sent shockwaves through every civilization, from the core worlds to the outer rim. The Drakmari Empire's response was swift and brutal. Within 2 weeks of General Krexthor's humiliating retreat, massive fleets began moving toward human space from every direction. This was no longer about claiming a few colony worlds. This was about making an example that would ensure no other species would dare challenge Drakmari supremacy. Fleet Admiral Kim Hyun-woo stood in the newly constructed war room on Earth's primary military station. He had been promoted after Admiral Yoon's victory at Gangnam, and his first task was to prepare humanity for total war. The holographic display before him showed Drakmari fleet movements across half the galaxy. Red arrows converged on human space, like the claws of some massive predator. Intelligence estimates suggested the Empire was committing over 200 warships to the coming assault. "Admiral," reported Captain Bae Yunai, his new Special Operations Commander, "our scout ships confirm that the Drakmari are planning simultaneous attacks on 15 human systems. They intend to overwhelm our defenses and force a quick surrender." Kim Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. Earth's total fleet numbered 73 combat vessels. Even with the allies Dr. Kang had been secretly recruiting, they were vastly outnumbered. "Captain Bae," he said finally, "what's the status of our new production facilities?" "The emergency shipyards are working around the clock, sir. We should have 30 new ships ready within the month, but that still leaves us badly outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything," the Admiral replied. "The Drakmari are still thinking about this the old way. They believe superior force guarantees victory." Ambassador Kim Tae-ho, now serving as Earth's wartime diplomatic coordinator, joined the meeting via secure communication from a hidden facility in the outer rim. "Admiral Kim," he reported, "our alliance with the smaller species is growing. The Zephyrians, Tidal High, and Chitter have all agreed to provide intelligence and logistics support. More importantly, they're spreading word of our resistance to other oppressed species." "Any word from the Galactic Council?" Kim asked. Kim Tae-ho's expression was grim. "The Council has issued a statement calling for peaceful resolution and respect for established territorial claims. In other words, they want us to surrender." "That's not going to happen," Admiral Kim said firmly. "Signal all human commanders. We are shifting to total war protocols. No more defensive actions, no more restraint. If the Drakmari want a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Meanwhile, on the recently liberated world of New Busan, Colonel Bae Yun-hai was leading the first major human counterattack. Her special forces had spent weeks infiltrating the planet, gathering intelligence on Drakmari defensive positions. The operation was not just about reclaiming territory. It was about sending a message. "Remember," she told her strike team leaders, We're not here to minimize casualties. We're not here to be humane. The Drakmari sterilized this world and drove our people from their homes. Today, we show them what human justice looks like. The attack began at dawn. Human forces struck simultaneously at 12 different targets across New Busan's surface. But these were not the careful, precise operations the galaxy expected from Earth's military. These were brutal, overwhelming assaults designed to terrify as much as to conquer. The Drakmari garrison had been expecting some kind of rescue attempt, but nothing like what actually happened. Human soldiers fought with a ferocity that seemed almost supernatural. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they used their hands. When they were wounded, they kept fighting. When faced with impossible odds, they attacked anyway. Colonel Bay led the assault on the main Drakmari command center personally. Her forces surrounded the heavily fortified building and demanded surrender. When the alien commander refused, she ordered the entire structure destroyed with everyone inside. "Sir," one of her lieutenants said uncertainly, "there might be civilians in there." "The Drakmari don't bring civilians to occupied worlds," Bay replied coldly. "Everyone in that building is a military target. Proceed with the attack." The command center was reduced to rubble within minutes. Similar scenes played out across the planet as human forces systematically eliminated every Drakmari presence on New Busan. When the fighting ended, Colonel Bay stood in the ruins of what had once been the colony's main city. Around her, human engineers were already beginning reconstruction efforts. But this time, they were building something different. This time, they were building fortresses. "Send a message to the Drakmari Empire," she ordered her communications officer. "Tell them that New Busan has been liberated. Tell them that Earth remembers every colony they took, every civilian they killed, every home they destroyed." The message was broadcast on all frequencies throughout the galaxy. Its content was simple but chilling. This is Colonel Bay Yunhai of the United Earth Federation Liberation Forces. New Busan is free. The Drakmari occupation has been terminated. All enemy personnel have been eliminated. We are coming for the rest of our worlds. The Drakmari response was immediate and furious. Emperor Vexcon himself, the supreme ruler of the empire, issued a proclamation calling for the complete extermination of the human plague. But humans were no longer fighting defensively. Admiral Kim Hyun-woo had implemented a strategy that shocked the galaxy with its audacity. Instead of waiting for Drakmari attacks, human fleets began hunting enemy forces across neutral space. The frigate Daegu, commanded by Captain Park Jin-woo, intercepted a Drakmari supply convoy near the border of Vorthak space. Instead of simply destroying the ships, the human crew captured them and interrogated the survivors for intelligence. What they learned changed everything. Dr. Kang So-young analyzed the captured data from her laboratory aboard the research vessel, Busan. The information confirmed her worst fears about Drakmari intentions. "Admiral," she reported to Kim Hyun-woo via secure channel, "the captured files show that this campaign against humanity is just the beginning. The Drakmari are planning to reorganize the entire galaxy. They want to eliminate or enslave every species they consider inferior." "Which species do they consider superior?" Kim asked. "Just themselves," Dr. Kang replied. "According to these documents, even the other major powers on the Galactic Council are considered temporary allies at best. The Drakmari's ultimate goal is complete galactic domination." This intelligence was quietly shared with the smaller species that had allied with humanity. The reaction was immediate and unanimous. The galaxy's oppressed civilizations began reaching out to Earth, offering whatever support they could provide. More importantly, Dr. Kang's research team had been working on a special project using the genetic samples from their captured database. The breakthrough came when they successfully developed biological weapons specifically targeting Drakmari physiology. "These compounds are completely harmless to other species," she explained to Admiral Kim, "but they're lethal to Drakmari biology. We can deploy them as aerosol weapons or contaminate their food and water supplies. Admiral Kim considered the implications. Doctor, using biological weapons crosses a line that we can't uncross. Are you certain this is necessary? Admiral, Dr. Kang replied quietly. The Drakmari have made it clear that they consider this a war of extinction. They don't plan to leave any humans alive. At this point, it's either them or us. The decision was made at the highest levels of Earth's government. Biological weapons would be deployed, but only against military targets and only as a last resort. The war reached its turning point when Admiral Kim launched Operation Restoration, a coordinated assault on every Drakmari-occupied human world simultaneously. Human fleets struck at targets throughout the galaxy, supported by intelligence from their alien allies and equipped with weapons the Empire had never seen before. The Drakmari, who had expected to fight scattered human resistance, instead found themselves facing a coordinated military campaign that targeted their weaknesses with surgical precision. On the core world of Drakmor Prime, emergency sessions of the Imperial Council were called as reports flooded in of defeats across their territory. General Krexthor, now stripped of his rank and facing court-martial for his defeat at Gangnam Station, watched the proceedings with growing alarm. Your Majesty, reported Admiral Zexthul, the Empire's chief military strategist, the humans are not fighting the way we expected. They're using tactics and weapons we've never encountered. Worse, they seem to know our fleet movements before we do. Emperor Vexcon's rage was legendary throughout the Empire. His voice echoed through the council chamber like the roar of an angry god. How is this possible? How can a species barely 2 centuries old be defeating the greatest military force? In galactic history, the answer came from an unexpected source. General Krexthor, despite his disgrace, was still one of the Empire's most experienced field commanders. Your Majesty, he said quietly, I think we misunderstood what humans are. We thought they were like the other species we've conquered. Civilized, rational, interested in self-preservation, but humans aren't like that. 1 year after the Battle of Gangnam Station, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The great chamber that had once echoed with the confident voices of the galaxy's most powerful species now felt tense and uncertain. Reports from across known space told the same impossible story. Humanity had won. The Drakmari Empire, rulers of 1/3 of the galaxy for 3 millennia, had formally surrendered to Earth just 6 days earlier. Their once mighty fleets were scattered wreckage, drifting in the void. Their colonies had either been liberated or abandoned. Emperor Vexcon himself was dead, killed when human forces captured the imperial capital. Now, humanity was demanding changes that would reshape galactic civilization. President An Min-Young of the United Earth Federation entered the council chamber, with a delegation unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Behind her walked not just human diplomats, but representatives of dozens of species that had never been allowed in these halls. The Zephyrians, with their translucent wings catching the chamber's light. The aquatic tidal high in their mobile water. Tanks, the insectoid chitter clicking nervously but standing proud. Species that had been ignored, dismissed, or oppressed by the major powers for centuries. Admiral Yoon Jae-won, hero of Gangnam Station, stood at President An's right side. His presence served as a quiet reminder of what had happened to the last galactic power that had underestimated humanity. Ambassador Kim Tae-ho, now Earth's senior diplomatic representative, approached the speaker's platform. His voice was as calm and measured as it had been a year ago, but every council member understood that the galaxy had changed. Esteemed counselors, he began, we return to these chambers not as petitioners seeking justice, but as equals demanding change. Counselor Vexthara, the Vorthak representative who had dismissed humanity's original plea, shifted uncomfortably in her crystal chair. The arrogance that had marked her earlier pronouncements was gone, replaced by barely concealed fear. "Ambassador Kim," she said, her voice lacking its former authority, "the Council recognizes the recent developments in human-Drakmari relations. We are prepared to discuss reasonable adjustments to territorial boundaries." President An stepped forward. Unlike the previous Earth leadership, there was nothing diplomatic or conciliatory about her manner. She was a leader who had guided her species through total war and emerged victorious. "Councillor Vexithara," she said coldly, "we are not here to discuss territorial adjustments. We are here to prevent this council from making the same mistakes that led to the Drakmari War." The chamber fell silent. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had been the supreme authority in known space. No one had ever spoken to them with such directness. Dr. Kang So-young, now serving as Earth's chief xenological advisor, activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Images appeared showing the extent of Drakmari conquests over the past century, not just human worlds but dozens of colonies belonging to smaller species. "The Drakmari Empire didn't just attack humanity," she explained. "Our investigation of captured Imperial records shows systematic oppression and displacement of over 40 different species. The Council's policy of non-interference allowed this to continue for decades." A representative of the gas-dwelling Nimari spoke up, his voice echoing strangely from his atmospheric bubble. "The Council cannot be held responsible for every territorial dispute in the galaxy. These matters are complex." Admiral Yoon's response was quiet but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Counselor, complex situations require decisive leadership. When we asked for your help, you told us that might makes right in this galaxy. We have simply proven that we are mightier than you thought." The human delegation presented their proposal for a new galactic order. It was not a request or a suggestion. It was an ultimatum backed by the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. The key points were simple but revolutionary. Protection for developing species, with enforcement by a joint fleet commanded by smaller civilizations. Mandatory arbitration for territorial disputes, with decisions binding on all parties. Economic sanctions against aggressive expansion. And most importantly, consequences for those who violated the new accords. The Chitter representative, speaking through a translation device, addressed the Council directly for the first time in the species' history. "For generations we have watched the strong prey upon the weak, while this Council did nothing. Humanity has shown us that strength can also mean protection. We stand with Earth." One by one, the representatives of smaller species added their voices to the Chitter's declaration. The Zephyrians, the Tidal High, the Peaceful Meridians, the Crystalline Resonance. Dozens of civilizations that had never had a voice in galactic affairs now stood united behind humanity. The major powers found themselves outnumbered for the first time in their history. Councillor Thexmore of the Arachnari Federation attempted to maintain the old order. These proposals would fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power. The major species have maintained stability for millennia. "Your stability was built on the suffering of everyone else," President An replied. "That era is over. The vote was called." For the first time in Galactic Council history, the major species were forced to choose between accepting change or facing the consequences of resistance. The Vorthak voted to accept the new accords. The memory of Drakmari defeat was too fresh to risk defying humanity. The Nimari followed suit, as did the energy beings known as the Flux. One by one, even the most arrogant civilizations bent to the new reality. Only the Arachnari Federation refused, their representative declaring that spiders bow to no mammalian upstarts. Admiral Yoon's response was delivered with the same gentle tone that had become humanity's trademark. "Councillor Thexmore, we respect your right to refuse. We hope you will reconsider." The implied threat was clear to everyone in the chamber. The Arachnari changed their vote within hours. As the session concluded and the new galactic accords were signed, Ambassador Kim sent a message to all human worlds. The galaxy has learned to respect us. Our patience has been rewarded with justice. But the real changes were happening far from the council chambers. On New Busan, now rebuilt as a fortress world, engineer Cho Hyeri worked alongside alien engineers to design new defensive systems. The colony that had once been destroyed as an example of human weakness was now a symbol of human determination. Captain Lee Dong-yun, promoted to admiral after his role in the liberation campaigns, established the first integrated fleet where human and alien crews served together. His flagship, the New Earth, carried representatives from 12 different species. Dr. Kang's research facilities had become centers of cooperation where human scientists worked with alien experts to develop technologies that would benefit all species. The weapons that had defeated the Drakmari were being converted into tools of exploration and discovery. Most importantly, the smaller species that had supported humanity during the war were finding their voices in galactic affairs for the first time. The Zephyrians established new trade routes under Earth's protection. The Tidal High began sharing their advanced underwater technologies. The Chitter's vast information networks became the foundation for a new galactic communication system on Earth itself. President An stood in the same office where her predecessor had received news of New Busan's fall. Through the window, she could see construction ships building humanity's newest achievement, a massive space station that would serve as headquarters for the Galactic Protection Fleet. Her aide brought her the daily intelligence briefing. Piracy was down 70% across the galaxy. Territorial disputes were being resolved through arbitration instead of warfare. Species that had been isolated for centuries were joining the galactic community as equals. "Madam President," her aide said, "we're receiving applications from 43 species requesting membership in the Protection Accords. The Galactic Council is asking for our input on 17 different policy matters." President An smiled. "Send our recommendations and remind the Council that we expect their full cooperation in implementing the new security protocols." As night fell over Earth's capital, President An reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. 1 year ago, they had been dismissed as a young species that needed to learn its place. Now, they were the guardians of galactic peace. The transformation had come at a terrible price. Hundreds of thousands of humans had died in the war against the Drakmari. Entire fleets had been sacrificed to achieve victory. Colonies had been destroyed and rebuilt. But from that sacrifice had emerged something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization powerful enough to protect the weak, instead of exploiting them. On distant Gangnam Station, Director Im Suho looked out at the stars from his rebuilt research facility. The station that had nearly fallen to Drakmari assault was now the center of the largest scientific collaboration in galactic history. Researchers from hundreds of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Admiral Yoon's final report on the Drakmari War had become required reading at military academies across the galaxy. Its conclusion was simple but profound. The galaxy mistook our patience for weakness. They confused our desire for peace with inability to wage war.